paleontologist, I'm probably the only professor in paleontology because it wasn't a field that attracted, well, first of all, it was very difficult for people of color like myself and other black people to get into paleontology and to be able to study paleontology because none of the historically disadvantaged universities actually offered paleontology as a career option. But the biggest problem is there are no jobs in paleontology. So this is the problem is that they're now qualified, but what do they do? And I know that just from my own lab, I know that I have people of color who would have been wonderful as paleontologists, but they're now working in other kinds of fields, sometimes nothing to do with paleontology. And it's such a loss to the science because these people would have been able to also make really great contributions to paleontology. And you really have to wait for someone to retire. But I should tell you, Ella, it doesn't stop young people from wanting to do paleontology. I have a lab full of students who actually are so excited about paleontology. And I think maybe that's what's important is that passion and commitment to study paleontology is still there.
Laura, you've been leading the fight against the illegal, illicit trade in fossils. Could you talk to me about how lucrative that trade is?
Well, I mean, most of my work is focusing on Mongolia, right? So we've been having this problem now for 30 years, I would say. So it started as a black market. Even when I was a university student, there were, some of my classmates were selling dinosaur eggs to tourists, right? And say, oh, these can reach to like thousands of dollars. Right, for me was like, oh gosh, I mean, at the time, I didn't really react strongly, but then, when I became a paleontologist and then came to US for my graduate study, I started paying attention to, Mongolian fossils, and eventually Mongolian, especially dinosaur fossils, started showing up in the catalogs of gem stores and stuff like that. I started collecting those. We have a law that Mongolian fossils are property of state. You cannot sell those fossils. These are animals that live back in time, right? So it's a part of Earth history. It tells so much about us, how life was back then. And we're learning through that. And imagine those knowledge and things being lost to someone's just private collection, not being seen. And most upsetting things, especially these illegally people collecting the fossils, they go to parts of the skeleton that cost money and destroy the rest of it. I've seen these kind of things in Mongolia that look like perfectly nice and preserved skeleton, but it's really damaged because those people, trying to get the skull, claws, and teeth, and that's so much of loss for science and knowledge, and so I think that's really bad. So, even we do have a laws, but it's not really enforced. And also, most importantly, people don't have the knowledge, especially in my community. We didn't have much of sources and information to learn about how valuable is this heritage that they can benefit instead of just selling for a few $100s that can only last for a week. And imagine if we keep the dinosaur fossils in the community, they can actually excite so many kids and also many tourists to come to see, pay the money, and also helps the local economy. And I mean, there's many different benefits in all of that.
How many fossils would you say you've actually helped return back to Mongolia?
I can say at least 70 dinosaur fossils being sent back to Mongolia.
Laura, could you tell me a little bit about the Institute for the Study of Mongolian Dinosaurs?
So when I first actually just stepped into Natural History Museum in New York first time, my eye got so big. And I mean, like, I just didn't know, like, such museum exists, right? Because I came coming from Mongolia. I mean, we do have a museum. But right that moment, I was thinking, I really want to have a museum just like this, right? And so for me, even though my father was a paleontologist, I didn't have much of way to learn more about this, prehistory, right? Animals and all of that. And so I started this organization that really changed the system in Mongolia in terms of how paleontology is being practiced. And also, we have so many people in caves that we want to reach out. And so that was the reason I established this institution. And so now it's been over 15 years. We reached out every corners of Mongolia, and we have education program for young scientists, program for middle and high schoolers. And then we have this bus. I got it from Natural History Museum in New York when their mobile museum program was closing. So I, went there. I said, I want this bus. And so they gave it to me. And of course the challenge was shipping to Mongolia. And we made it, and we got it. In 2015, we started the program. We have 21 regions in Mongolia. So we basically this summer we're reaching the 21st region of Mongolia. So this is 10th year anniversary of our bus.
It's like a mobile classroom, effectively.
Exactly. Now we're actually in the process of building a museum, and we got a land at the Flaming Cliffs. That's a very famous place in Mongolia. Very first dinosaurs been found by Museum of Natural History in New York 100 years ago. Velociraptor been found back then 100 years ago. Unfortunately, our community didn't learn about all these discoveries. So we're building the museum right at the site where everything began, where all discoveries started.
Sounds amazing. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Anastasia. Yes.
Balor and Naalya, thank you so much for being on the conversation.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella.
I was talking to Dr. Balor Titsig Minjin and Dr. Naalya Chinsami Turan about paleontology. I'm Ella Al-Shamahi, and the conversation from the BBC World Service will be back next week.
This is the BBC World Service, showing how sport can be a powerful tool for social inclusion.
Football is the most popular sport today. Here in the UK, a project is cleverly using this game to help police officers connect with young people.
I've managed to make more friends and be more confident in myself.
How sport can bring outsiders in. Tuesday at 7 and 14 GMT. At bbcworldservice.com, World Questions with Johnny Diamond.
Canada and a panel waiting for questions from Canadians from across 6 time zones in the world's second largest country. There is so much to debate and a brilliant panel to give us the answers.
This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Hello and welcome to Newsday on the BBC World Service with Victoria Wallenda and Rob Young.
Ecuador's incumbent President Daniel Noboa, known for his tough military crackdown on violent criminal gangs, has won re-election, but his challenger has said that she does not accept the result and has claimed fraud. We'll get the latest.
Also ahead, Ukraine's President Zelensky has urged Donald Trump to visit Ukraine to witness the devastation caused by Russia's invasion, just hours after a missile attack on the city of Sumy killed 34 people and injured more than 100. We'll speak to somebody caught up in the attack.
The Sudanese paramilitary Rapid Support Forces says it has taken control of a major camp for displaced people. At least 100 people are killed during the 4-day assault. We're speaking to an aid group in the country.
And there's more confusion over Donald Trump's trade war, with the president suggesting there'll be new tariffs on computer chips this week. First, a bulletin of news.
Hello, I'm Chris Barrow with the BBC News.
Ecuador's incumbent President Daniel Noboa says he's won a historic and clear presidential election victory after he was declared winner of the runoff with 56% of the vote. The 37-year-old business heir has seen voters endorse his tough approach to rampant violence by drug cartels and gangs. Addressing supporters, Mr. Noboa said the people of Ecuador had chosen the way forward.
This victory has been historic, a victory of more than 10 points, a victory of more than 1 million votes. And that's because of the perseverance of everyone in this team that wants a new Ecuador.
Mr. Noboa's left-wing challenger, Luisa Gonzalez, has expressed disbelief at the result and says she'll demand a recount, though she's not given evidence of fraud. The Peruvian novelist and Nobel laureate Mario Vargas Llosa has died in Lima at the age of 89. His death was announced by his son on Sunday. Natasha Gruneberg looks back at the life of one of Latin America's most influential literary voices.
Mario Vargas Llosa mastered many literary styles, including comedy, melodrama and social satire. He rose to fame in the 1960s with novels such as The Time of the Hero and The Greenhouse, and many of his books, like Aunt Julia and The Scriptwriter, were made into films. He was politically active throughout his career and ran for the Peruvian presidency in 1990, but lost to Alberto Fujimori. After initially supporting the Cuban revolutionary government of Fidel Castro, he became disenchanted and was outspoken against Cuba's record on human rights.
President Zelensky has urged Donald Trump to visit Ukraine to witness the devastation caused by Russia's invasion. Mr. Zelensky's remarks on CBS came hours after Russian ballistic missiles killed 34 people and wounded more than 100 in the northeastern city of Sumy.
Come, look, and then let's move with the plan how to finish the war. You will understand with whom you have a deal. You will understand what Putin did.
President Trump himself has now called the Sumy attack horrible, though he said he was told that the Russians made a mistake. A spokesperson for the World Health Organization has told the BBC that conditions for medical staff in hospitals in Gaza are beyond description. Margaret Harris was speaking after staff at the Al Ali Baptist Hospital said Israeli missiles had destroyed the intensive care unit. Israel said the strike was aimed at a Hamas command center, but gave no evidence. Ms. Harris said medical facilities were protected under international humanitarian law and should not be attacked. She added that Gaza doctors were struggling to perform very difficult surgery on huge numbers of people injured in the Israeli bombardment. This is the world news from the BBC. China's President Xi Jinping has called for deeper economic ties with Vietnam and greater regional cooperation ahead of a three-nation tour of Southeast Asia starting today. He'll meet his counterparts in Vietnam, Cambodia and Malaysia in what Beijing calls a trip of major importance to regional stability. Hungary's parliament is expected to vote today on a constitutional amendment that would allow authorities to ban public gatherings seen as promoting or displaying homosexuality or gender reassignment. The move is backed by the governing right-wing Fidesz party. Hungary's LGBT community has strongly opposed the change, calling it discriminatory. Nick Thorpe reports from Budapest.
This 15th Amendment to the Constitution links the right of assembly to respect for earlier laws on the protection of children. According to the text, any public gathering which depicts sexuality for its own sake or promotes or displays deviation from the identity of gender at birth, gender reassignment or homosexuality can be banned. In January, the socially conservative Prime Minister Viktor Orban said he would block the annual Pride celebration, which normally takes place at the end of June. Pride activists and other liberal groups plan to blockade the Hungarian parliament.
The former Brazilian president Jair Bolsonaro is recovering in hospital after undergoing lengthy intestinal surgery linked to complications from a stabbing attack in 2018. His wife posted on social media that the operation had been successful and had lasted 12 hours. Northern Ireland's Rory McIlroy has won the US Masters Golf Tournament at Augusta in Georgia. He beat England's Justin Rose in a tense playoff. It's McIlroy's first Masters win and makes him the first European to complete a Grand Slam of golf's 4 major tournaments. That's the latest BBC News.
Thanks very much for that bulletin. Hello, you're with Newsday from the BBC with Victoria Wahunga and Rob Young. Thanks for being with us again. Hope you're well. Coming up this half hour, you'll hear stories from Ecuador, from Ukraine and from Sudan. You'll also get the latest on Donald Trump's trade war with Serena Hotel in business, and in sport, Isaac Fannin on Rory McIlroy realising his lifetime ambition of winning all of golf's major championships. Your thoughts on all of our stories welcome, of course, by text or by WhatsApp. The number you need is +44 77 86 20 50 85.
We are starting this half hour in Ecuador, where following a second round of voting in presidential elections, the incumbent Daniel Noboa has been declared the victor with 56% of the vote. He'd been facing off against the left-wing contender Luisa Gonzalez, who claims fraud with the result. This was the president after results were announced.
This event has been historic. This victory has also been historic. A victory of more than 10 points. A victory of more than 1 million votes, where there is no doubt who the winner is. And it is based on perseverance, on struggle, work of each of the members of this team that seeks this new Ecuador. Ecuador does not want to return to the past. Ecuador wants to walk forward on the road, which is not always an easy road. On the road to tranquility, to peace, to employment, Ecuadorians want a better life.
Well, the first round resulted in a razor-thin difference between the two in an election where the war against drug trafficking gangs and plans to reinvigorate the stalling economy were key issues for the general electorate. Well, as asked our South America correspondent Ione Wells if the empathic win was a surprise.
It does seem somewhat of a surprise because the polls leading up to the election suggested that it would be really, really close, and the first round of this election was also really, really close. It was declared pretty much a tie, which is why it went to this second round. So I think some were expecting that it would be a close result, that we may not even get a result on the night of the election. The fact that the electoral authorities have now said Daniel Noboa won this election with 56% of the vote, more than 10% above his left-wing challenger Luisa Gonzalez, has led him to call this a historic victory. She, though, has not accepted this result. She has claimed fraud without providing any evidence and said that she plans to demand a recount, although she won't be able to do that unless she does provide evidence to substantiate these claims.
So what swung it for President Noboa this time around?
One thing that this result suggests is it's an endorsement of his iron fist approach to tackling violent crime in the country. There has been a severe spike in drug gang related violence in Ecuador in recent years, and this year has already got off to a pretty bloody start. In January alone there was more than 780 people murdered in the country, and his pitch to voters was essentially to let him continue for the next 4 years trying to tackle this problem with some of his quite hardline policies against it, including things like militarizing the streets, building new maximum security prisons. He even said in a recent interview with the BBC that he wants foreign armies, troops from the US, from Europe, to help him in this so-called war against violent drug gangs. So for many people this was a vote about continuity, but also I think it will be seen as a mandate for him to continue some of those policies. That being said, given what Luisa Gonzalez, his challenger, has said following this result, I think this election is going to leave Ecuador deeply divided, and if he is to avoid division, unrest in the country, I think he will need to quite swiftly start showing that his plans are delivering results.
He beat Gonzalez in a snap election in 2023. You did mention the violence that is rife in his country. What other top priorities will President Noboa be looking at in his next term?
Well, the economy was another big issue for voters in this election. Unemployment still remains very high. The economic growth has been pretty was seen as controversial figure.
Whereas the phones contain their prices from the nearest hooker or call their toll-free number, which is 0800 299
Now, just a bit, looks like while you are going into the weekend, Farida and Naalya,
Very authoritarian, so this might be a very good
went ahead to file a petition seeking to nullify the victory of North Korea by the now in this petition
in Ecuador, and Daniel did his campaign too. He said that he wanted to invest in infrastructure, in new renewable energy sources, that he wanted to boost employment for young people in particular, and I think in a way that is linked to his plans to tackle violent crime, because one of the things that makes a lot of particularly young Ecuadorians vulnerable to recruitment by some of these criminal gangs that have really sort of taken hold in the country in recent years is the fact that the economy is poor and that there are not huge amounts of job opportunities in the country at the moment.
Clearly Wells, our South America correspondent.
Let's head to Ukraine now, where the president there, Volodymyr Zelensky, has urged Donald Trump to visit the country to see for himself the devastation caused by Russia's invasion. It follows Russia's deadliest attack on Ukrainian civilians for 2 years. President Zelensky made the plea on the US television network CBS.
We want you to come, and I think to come and to see. You think you understand what's going on here? Okay, we respect your position. You understand. But please, before any kind of decisions, any kind of formats of negotiations, come to see people, civilians, warriors, hospitals, churches, children, destroyed or dead. Come, look, and then let's move with a plan how to finish the war.
Well, that was broadcast just hours after 2 Russian ballistic missiles struck the center of the Ukrainian city of Sumy as people were on their way to church on Palm Sunday. The explosions near the State University and the Congress Center left bloody bodies scattered in the streets. The American Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, called the attack horrifying, while Germany's Chancellor-in-Waiting, Friedrich Merz, accused Russia of committing a war crime. Let's cross now to the city of Sumy and speak to Yulia, who lives there. Yulia, welcome to the program. You witnessed the aftermath of these attacks. Just tell us what you saw. Yulia, can you hear me? See, after those missiles hit your city yesterday.
Well, yesterday was the scariest day of my life. The morning was started with until me so tired, and the world around drove into hell. Flames, buildings, destroyed buildings, many cars, a burning bus. I looked around and couldn't believe it was real. I was terrified, shocked, and crying. It was just fear, it was pain. People were screaming, rushing to help, pulling the body from the rubble. Everyone had the same thought. Are my loved ones alive or not? I immediately called my mom. She lives in another city and also in Sumy region. I told her that I was alive. I tried to calm her and to calm myself. It was very terrible, shocking, and crying. At the clinic where I work, we are now treating injured animals for free. People are donating blood, raising funds, doing everything they can to help. We are scared, but we are also united. Some may leave, but others will stay in Ukraine, because we are Ukrainians. We stand together, we are strong, and will never surrender.
Sumy is close to the Russian border, isn't it? So presumably people in Sumy have become used to attacks on the city by Russian forces. What was it, do you think, that made this attack so different, so shocking, so scary for people?
It was very scary and shocking. It started like morning. Everyone come to their works or maybe church, and after a missile strike, it was in 1 second. We don't understand what this is real. We can't believe to this.
There is talk that the Russian forces may be preparing some kind of new offensive in your part of Ukraine. Will you stay in Sumy, or will you leave? Will you try and go somewhere else?
I will stay at Sumy.
Despite the risks? Why?
Because I'm Ukrainian and I live in my country, in my city, in my region, and our nation will never surrender.
What about your friends? What about your family? Are they saying they'll stay in Sumy as well?
My mother don't live in Sumy. She lives in the Sumy region, but she will stay also here. Some of my friends go abroad, but the most part will stay also in Sumy.
Well, Yulia, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about what you witnessed yesterday and your thoughts after that attack. Thanks so much. Yulia, who lives in the Ukrainian city of Sumy, will be returning to Sumy in about a quarter of an hour's time and hearing from our reporter James Waterhouse, who also witnessed the aftermath of that double missile strike on Sunday. You're listening to Newsday from the BBC World Service with Victoria Wahunda and Rob Young and Isaac Fannin, who's here with your sport headlines.
An incredibly busy day of sport on Sunday. We start with history. Rory McIlroy became the 6th man to win a career golf Grand Slam as he finally won a Masters title. He certainly made it dramatic as Justin Rose produced a sensational comeback. McIlroy missing a putt to win it on the 18th, forcing a playoff, but the Northern Irishman held his nerve to become the first man since title to win all 4 of golf's major tournaments. We're going to be looking into that with James Gregg a little bit later on in the programme. In basketball, the NBA regular season came to an end. The Golden State Warriors are going to have to play an extra match to get into the playoffs as they were beaten by the LA Clippers in overtime, 124-119. The Warriors will play the Memphis Grizzlies on Tuesday in the play-in. In the Basketball Africa League, Egypt's Al Ittihad and Nigeria's River Hoopers are into the playoffs, which will take place in South Africa. They finished in the top 2 of the Kalahari Conference. And in Sunday's Newsday Presenter Derby, Manchester United suffered a humiliating defeat in the Premier League, 4-1 defeat away at Newcastle. Certainly a sad day for one presenter in this esteemed studio.
She's coping.
I have to.
She's used to it these days, I mean.
That's what we're saying. You know, it's not even a bad day. It's been a few bad years.
Yeah.
Isaac, thank you very much, and Isaac will be with us later on in the program. Now, global tariff turmoil shows no sign of easing, with President Donald Trump suggesting that he will be announcing new semiconductor tariffs this week, and that Friday's exemptions on import levies for smartphones and computers are to be short-lived. It all moves so quickly. We try to keep an eye on everything that is happening when it comes to these tariffs, who says what, who does what, and our business reporters keep an eye on this. And for more on that, let's bring in Suranjana Tiwari, who is in Singapore. Suranjana, you're following the latest developments as they happen. What has the impact been on these exemptions on Asia markets when they opened this morning?
Yeah, still a bit of a roller coaster ride, but not anything close to what happened last year. Shares in Asian tech companies especially are actually up, with major suppliers to companies like Apple rising after the US government granted those temporary exclusions from steep tariffs on smartphones, computers and some other electronics. Now, a lot of those are imported largely from China, and it looks like about 20 20 product types are covered, and they account for about 23% of imports from China into the United States. Shares in Foxconn, Apple's largest iPhone assembler, gaining around 4%, and also some laptop makers and artificial intelligence server companies also rising, as well as South Korea's Samsung Electronics, which of course supplies to Apple and is the second-ranked smartphone vendor in the US market.
So Mr. Trump has said that nobody is getting off the hook for unfair trade balances. And let's look at the tariffs and those semiconductors that have been announced that could happen. What would that mean for companies in the Asia Pacific?
That's right, some reprieve for electronics and manufacturers in the region, but Trump also in the last few hours, speaking on board Air Force One, said that there will be tariffs on semiconductors in the next week, and you can imagine that that is really unsettling for companies and markets in this region because so much production happens here. Taiwan especially is such a big manufacturer of semiconductors, which we use in all our products, phones, laptops, even our dishwashers. So Trump made these comments, and we're already seeing that shares in TSMC, which is the world's largest contract chip maker, are slipping, and as well as memory chip maker SK Hynix, which of course is from South Korea.
All right, Suranjana, we look forward to having you on later on in the program, and we do have a live page on everything, all the latest updates on this story, bbc.com/news.
We're going to head to Sudan now because the paramilitary rapid support forces say they've taken control of a major camp for displaced people in the state of North Darfur. The Zamzam and neighbouring Abu Shuk camps provide homes to more than 700,000 people, many of whom are facing famine-like conditions. The four-day assault by the paramilitary forces has caused the deaths of at least 100 people, including 20 children, as well as a medical team, according to the United Nations. We'll have an update in the next few minutes about how the RSF takeover is affecting humanitarian aid in these camps and in the neighbouring city of El Fasher. But first, let's hear this testimony from a Sudanese person who lives in Abu Shuk camp, which has also been under attack in recent days, and he sent this pre-recorded message, and for their own safety, wanted to remain anonymous.
The situation right now is completely deteriorating due to the siege imposed by the RSF, and also as a result of the continuous fighting in North Darfur State in general and in Al Fashir City, the capital of the North Darfur State. Thousands of civilians living with no water, no food, no medicine. Everything is getting bad. They cannot access to food because of lack of money. They cannot access to water because many water resources that we have here in the camp have been destroyed. Specifically yesterday, we have the main water resources. We have just implemented a project using solar power energy to at least provide water for the civilians here in the camp, but unfortunately it was destroyed yesterday by the RSF artillery shelling. And today morning there is no water at all in the camp. In the last few weeks, depend on Zamzam camp, depend on the market of the Zamzam camp to deliver some goods from there. But after the camp has been attacked, that has affected our life here in Abu Shuk camp. I don't know, but it's really horrific.
Well, among the people killed in the latest attacks on those camps in Western Darfur were 9 humanitarian workers from the charity Relief International, one of the few NGOs operating inside Zambia.